Hello, welcome. I'm Amy Colvin. I'm the Director of Outreach Ministries at Green Trails Church, and we're here to talk about Green Trails Church newest ministry, the Social Justice Ministry. And social justice is such a broad topic, and we're so excited that we can begin it at Green Trails Church. And it's going to be a slow walk until we learn how we can do this truly in ministry. So we wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about the origin of the ministry and where the plans are in both immediate and long term. So I'm joined by two members of the team that are planning the ministry. Founder and inspiration Amanda Hughes is with us, and then Jan Hungerford is also a member of the team, and she is helping with the initial conversation book study that we're having, although she did tell me not to call it a book study, but I failed with words. So she's going to explain it a little bit more. And so Amanda, let's start with you. This is certainly your passion. We're all we all have a little bit of passion, but you're the standout in the passion. And you conceived this ministry and put it together and really gave it the stuff that it needs to succeed and have a path. So talk a little bit more about what fueled you and what your plans are as we go forward.
Well, I guess I've always sort of been interested in social justice. I've been interested for quite a while, and I've taken some studies at Green Trails that have sort of fostered that. And I just wanted to do something more. And I think Pastor Linda saw that I had a passion for social justice, and she suggested that I start our own social justice ministry with the team here. And so that's where the idea was sort of conceived. Did you want to talk about the components of it?
Yes, please. Yeah,
okay.
Let's talk about the components.
So I'm doing a podcast to start off each topic. So we'll have 6 topics throughout the year. And the podcast is going to be I'll interview somebody within the community or an expert in the field that we're studying. I'm primarily looking for people in the community because that's who I kind of want to give a voice to. That's who we really want to that's where we're going to get our best ideas on how we can help the community and help in a social justice way. So that's that. And the podcast idea came from listening to some other podcasts that I really admired. One of them is I listened to a podcast called The F Word, Conversations in Faith with Matt Miofsky. And I like his conversation style. And so I thought it was really interesting. And I thought, wow, that's something that we could totally do. And then I listened to some other social justice ministry podcasts or not ministry podcasts, but social justice podcasts that I just find really interesting. And I thought, I'm a very audio type person. So I figured I'd bring it to the rest of Green Trails if I could.
There you go. What we haven't mentioned here yet is that you are the lay minister for the church, and that's important for those in the church and out of the church in case they don't know that. So that was part of what your conversation with Pastor Linda started with. How can what is my role? And then I think she did recognize that your gift in social justice and your passion for that. So that's important. So the first component is the podcasts. And then what are the other components?
So we'll have a small group study for each topic where we'll get together and discuss. We'll have some reading materials and we'll just get together and have good conversation. We're trying to make this as non-intimidating as possible. We really just want to have conversation about it, and then, so we've got the podcast, we have the small group study, and then we have, we're going to try to do one event for, where we'll introduce the public as well. into the event if we can, So with our first topic, which is racism and diversity, we're going to be also watching a movie, having a screening of a movie called Race to be Human at the church. So
there you go. And then there's the mission component. We're always going to try to have a mission project
yes,
around that focuses on whatever topic that we're looking at, and we have quite a few ideas about that. And right, we're doing the Martin Luther King month of service this month at the church, which kind of gives credence to the idea that that's what Martin Luther King believed in, and certainly tied into racism and diversity as well. Talk about, if you would, the topics that you chose for the 6 areas, and maybe how they came about in terms of narrowing it down, because social justice, as I said earlier, is so broad. I mean, it encompasses so many things. And so to narrow it down to 6 was even hard, but there's a story behind each of those for how you narrowed it down.
Well, yeah, we came up with 6 topics, and like you said, it's very overwhelming, and so we just wanted to narrow in on a few this year, and then next year we'll move on to some more. And we're always looking for suggestions if anybody has anything specific that they would like to recommend that we cover. But this year, our first topic is going to be racism and diversity. And my real reason for wanting to introduce that one was my relationship with Heather Fleming, and listening to her podcast. She's got a podcast called Listen, Learn, Love. And her focus is on learning about racism and diversity without the shame. So that just like appeals to me so much. And she suggests having conversation. And so I think that's such an important part of it. So that was my whole reason for wanting that particular topic. And then the next one will be climate change. And that is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because, I started learning about that in college, and I know it affects my children. And so I really want to focus on that and look at it as, how is that a social justice ministry? I want to kind of talk about that and then do a book study on that. And again, the book that I have, not necessarily a book study, but a conversation, but the book that I have to go with that is also very non-shame based. It's very conversational, which is wonderful. And then we have the topic of gun violence. No, excuse me. Before that, we're going to be doing mental health and trauma. And Pastor Linda has a passion for that. And she had mentioned that she wanted to lead that small group. And we're gonna interview a friend who is also a psychologist. And she's going to talk about trauma. And let's see, the next topic is gun violence. We're going to talk about that. And that was a topic that Julie Fells had mentioned that she really was interested in. So we decided on that one as a good one because St. Louis obviously has a lot of gun violence. And so it is something that needs to be addressed. And then we have food insecurity, which you've said that you would be happy to lead the study on. And then we have teen homelessness, which is also a very concerning topic. And I'm not sure where the passion came from for that, other than that I have some friends on Facebook that have expressed that it is a concern in our society. And I want to explore it. I want to talk about it and see what we can do. So
some of the things we talked about when we talked about teen homelessness was the LGBTQ connection with that, as well as just mental health. We can go back to that as well. They can tie all of that into each other. And so what a crisis it can be, and where the origins of that can be, because it's hard to imagine teen homelessness. So where is that origin, and what can we do about it? And it's a big deal, and it's ministry within some of the agencies like Epworth Children's and Family Services here in St. Louis, one of the partners that we already have. And so, yeah, it's a real important topic right now. So
Yeah.
it's great. And then, the mental health and trauma, you don't have to have had a cataclysmic event in your life to have that relate to you. I mean, all that we have done for the last 2 years in the middle of a pandemic is be through collective trauma. And I
Yeah.
think we talk about that a lot in staff meetings and how you do minister to that and how you talk about it and how we come out of it. And none of us may know that because it's so complex, but to begin to acknowledge the trauma that we've been through together, I think is important. So all of these important topics are really important. Now, one last thing, Amanda, that I want to talk about in terms of this is how, because so many times social justice is so politicized.
Mhm.
And so, but we're not here for the political aspect. This is a social justice ministry. So you explain this so well on your introductory podcast, but talk a little bit about how this is ministry and how that's meant to be in our church.
Well, I think that Jesus tells us to walk justly. He wants us to stand up for the oppressed. That's what he did. That's what he stood for. And I think that that's what we should be doing. I think that's what he calls us to do. And that's, I mean, if you really want to get down to why I did this, it's because of that. I really want to, I want to get back to that. I think, I mean, I'm not saying that we're far from it. I'm just saying, like, I just feel like that's what we need to be doing. Right.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thought, and it is. You're right. We're not far from it, but sometimes we take our focus off of it,
Yeah.
and we do get mired into a lot of other things. And so the more that we
Yeah.
can focus on it, and so each of these topics and each of this, you're guiding us to how this is important in our walk as Christians and how it's ministry. It's not politics. It's ministry and
Right.
how important it is to care for the kingdom because that's what we're charged to do. Thy
Exactly.
kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's not an accident that that's the Lord's prayer and the most
Yeah.
important thing it's
And
supposed to
also faith without works
be.
is dead, right? So
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we believe in the United Methodist Church, particularly. And I think that what you said about conversations, you, Jan, and I all attended the Walk Justly conference at Manchester United Methodist Church in the fall, and Emmanuel Cleaver III talked about that the differences that we have as humans, and we can talk. And Emmanuel Cleaver III is a pastor in Kansas City, and he's an African American pastor in an African American church, but he talked about it in terms of racism, but I think that we can acknowledge, and I think it's important to acknowledge that the differences that we have as humans are often that we don't have conversations with each other. And
yes.
so the more that we can understand and have conversation, the more that we can maybe walk in each other's shoes just a little. So that's why that conversation part is so important, such an important component to this
Yeah.
ministry. And I really applaud you for making that an important component. So, segue to Jan, who will be the first leader of our conversation in racism and diversity. And you wanted to talk about how this is going to be a conversation and how the things that we need to share without shame and without fear about this topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the hugest point right there, is to be able to talk about it and not be ashamed of where you are as an individual or feel guilty about what you have or haven't done in your life. I just think it's important to be part of a group where we're supportive of each other. We're going to use some books for the group just to give us some definitions and some background and some jumping off points, but you don't have to read the book to participate. I've read the books and they're great, but it's not necessary. And the hope is it's a little bit, I shouldn't say a little bit, it's a lot scary to talk about racism and diversity. We're not used to it. And I think up until a few years ago, I had very few conversations about it. I felt in my heart that I wasn't prejudiced or racist, but I've kind of learned a little bit since then that I have a much longer way to go. And I think in conversation with other people, which I've been blessed to be able to do through some book studies on Zoom during the pandemic, there's a lot of wisdom in our hearts and our minds, and to be able to share that with each other and feel more comfortable about talking about it, so then we can spread that to other people and feel more comfortable. That will be a huge thing for me. So that's our hope, and that we can share our thoughts and feelings and maybe make a little progress in what we know.
Sure. So do you want to mention the 3 books that you're using for reference, just so people will know? But again, emphasizing that no one has to read these. They're just used for reference.
Actually, they're right over here because I can't remember the name of the 3rd one. Hold on one second.
Visuals are wonderful. They're always helpful. That's why we're here. Visual learning.
So White Fragility. Is this backwards when I do this?
Nope, you're perfect.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Anyway, this is a book that I've studied twice in Zoom, and it's written by a white woman who does diversity training. And I've just learned so much about this, and it just really hits home with kind of where I am. White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism is the subtitle. And then the next one, good Heather Fleming has been mentioned, and I also listened to her podcast, and she's a local person here who was actually a teacher at my kids' high school, and felt the calling to start this work that incredible work that she's been doing. This is called My Black Friend Says, and it's got some really great information and thoughts in there.
And she's the founder, and help me get this right, Amanda, for the Missouri Equity Education Partnership. Is that right?
I don't know if she's the founder, but I know that she was heading it. I think she just hired somebody else, or I think she just put somebody else in as the director, but she's the founder of In Purpose Education.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying all that. So that's great too. And so she's no wallflower.
No, she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
And then the last book is called You Are Your Best Thing. And this is a collection of essays by African Americans. And it's edited by Tarana Burke, who is known for the founder of the Me Too movement, and Brene Brown, who's a pretty well-known researcher and psychologist and all kinds of credits. She has a wonderful podcast, and that's where I heard this. And I was listening to one of the essays as I was walking, and I'm crying because it gives you a beautiful example of humanity and what African Americans live with every day in our society. And again, it's no shame. It's just kind of, this is what it is kind of thing. And it really spoke to me. So we'll be talking about 1 or 2 of those essays in there. So those are the 3 books.
How do you listen to the essays? Is that on the podcast, or
it was? She did a podcast with Tarana. Brene's podcast was with Tarana, her co-editor, and it was about this book. So they had one of the authors read his essay.
I'm going to have to look that up.
I'm doing
my growth challenge that Amanda's put us through too. I mean, I'm going to be like listening and walking and trying to be healthy. All my other goals. Because I have goals. They're not Amanda's goals. They're my goals, right?
Okay. Right.
All right, ladies, is there anything else? Amanda, is there anything we've missed about the ministry? It's a long journey, and I think it's important to note that this is the beginning of the journey for the ministry. And how it turns out. So this year is about education, right? We are going to try to do a mission project with every topic, but we really aren't going to put a lot of feet to the ground in terms of putting a ministry together in terms of action this year. But the conversations will hopefully lead us to that, I think, is what your goal was. Is that correct?
Yeah. I just want to mention the three tenets of the ministry, just so that you have kind of an idea of what we're trying to do as far as self-growth. So there's the personal part, like the inner, or the personal part where you study and you reflect and you think about what it is that we're doing, and then you talk. And then there's the interrelational part of it where we talk about it with other people, and we talk about our relationship with those that are around us. And then there's the overarching system. So there's the system of oppression that we're studying, but then the overarching system is the Bible and God's word, and what does God have to say about it. So those are the three components that we are aiming to cover.
That's so beautiful, and I love every part of the ministry that you've conceived, and so thank you for conceiving it. Green Trails is so lucky to have someone with this passion to do this kind of ministry. Thank you for that, and thank you for Jan for all that you're doing to help and move it along. And I know your passion as well, and thank you for that. I just want to end. You talked about the personal component so much, and I just want to end what we're doing here with something that was honestly a meme. So I want to be honest, but I did post it today from the Contemplative Mock. Authentic spirituality is always about changing you. It's not about trying to change anyone else. And I think that's what you were talking about, the personal element, is we've got to talk to ourselves, and we've got to listen and be able to understand what this ministry will mean to us first before we can broaden it out to the rest of the world. And I think that's your purpose this year, and I think it's wonderful. And again, we're lucky to have you in Green Trails. I can't wait to see what Green Trails does with this. Thanks, ladies, for joining me today. And Amanda, two things. We do have the website, so it's umcgt.org, and it's under Connect. This is the social justice ministry. The social media is yet to come, and then but you do have an email in case people have questions. That was the other component here.
Yes, it's coffeeconvo@umcgt.org. So it's COFFEECONVO at umcgt.org. And it's if you have any questions, any comments, we welcome anything that you have to say. And if you want me to address it in a future podcast, I can do that. And if you don't want me to address it, you just want to vent, it's okay. We're here to have the conversation, and that's what this is.
Well, and I think that you've talked about many times that, if you only hear the good stuff, you don't grow. And, I think Matt Mioski talks about that too, that we've got to have the tough conversations, that that's where, and so if you don't agree with it, it's okay. And that's important. And you are willing to listen to that too. One last thing, the topic, we didn't do the title of your podcast.
Oh, my podcast is Coffee and Conversations with Amanda Hughes. And if you want to look it up on Apple or on Spotify, look it up under Amanda Hughesy, one word. I think that was a typo. I put a Y at the end somehow, and it just stayed. But if you look it up under Amanda Hughesy, it should come up.
I'm going to get you a t-shirt, my new nickname for you, Hughesy. Hey, Hughesy. But that hopefully promote your, because there are a lot of, when I looked it up, there were a lot of coffee and conversation titles for podcasts, but the difference is with Amanda Hughesy. So it's going to be great. All right, ladies, thank you so much for your time today. And if you have any questions, coffeeconvo@umcgt.org, or Amanda or Jan will be happy to answer any of those when they see you around. Looking forward to hopefully you all joining in the conversation. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Amy.